Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Villa podcast. As usual, recently, I'm your solo host, Dan Wiseman, bringing you yet another preview, maybe the last one before Dan and I are reunited as a duo of Monday night's game at the City Ground against Nottingham Forest. It's going to be a very tricky one. A lot has changed for both sides since they last played. Obviously, Forest had that 4-0 defeat to Leicester at the King Power, and we had that 0-0 draw at Ellen Road, an absolute snooze fest. But in the week that's been pretty hectic for both clubs, we're going to look at what's changed, how they're going to impact this match, and most importantly, whether Villa can get a result. Let's get into it. The main talking point from the Villa this week is obviously our little injury crisis. It's been a very difficult period for Villa in terms of injuries, and it's the injury list and the amount of players we have on the treatment table has only grown since we last played Leeds. Leon Bailey, surprise, surprise, has joined the list of players who are unavailable for this game. And now, whilst that raises a whole other discussion about Leon Bailey's long-term future with yet another muscle injury hampering his playing time, it raises some selection questions because obviously we are aware of what's happening in the defence, and thankfully Matty Cash has returned just at the right time for El Cashico to face his former side, Nottingham Forest, and that helps us out massively in that back line, considering Ludwig Augustinsson got injured in the game against Leeds, who is very much stepping in for Luca Dean, and those two are seemingly on a similar time frame in terms of when we can expect our first choice left backs back from injury. Looks like Dean is going to be about 3 weeks, and Augustinsson is going to be assessed in about the same amount of time. So you'd expect them to be back within the same sort of time period to face that final run of games going into the World Cup. But Matty Cash is back after the injury that kept him out for most of September, kept him away from the international break as well and from going away with Poland. So he'll slot in at right back. You expect it to be Konza, Mings. Whilst we're on the subject of centre-backs, it's great to see that Diego Carlos's rehab is in full swing. He looks like he's coping really, really well. It's obviously going to be very tough for him physically and mentally being out for that amount of time. But it looks like his recovery is going well. It's good that he's sharing a lot of updates on his Instagram. So if you don't follow him, I'd recommend checking it out because it's a source of some positivity, put it that way, that he's getting on with things. And then at left back, it looks like it will be Ashley Young, who I actually think has played better at right back than he has at left back this season. But needs must. Ashley's been pretty reliable whenever he's played this year. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon. So he'll slot in at left back, and that will be the defence. Going forward, though, that's where the questions marks are because obviously Bailey, I didn't expect him to start against Leeds. He did. I don't think he would have necessarily started this game had he been fit anyway because I don't think he's particularly impressed in the two recent games against Southampton and Leeds. So I think a change is due. And with Bailey being out, it lends itself, obviously, if we stay with the same formation, we're playing three up front with two wingers and a main man up top, lends itself to Emi Buendia on that right-hand side, who obviously a lot of Villa fans have been clamoring to see. We did a video on him just recently. If you haven't seen that one, check it out because we talked about his situation at Villa, it's the highs, the lows, why he's not starting, potential ins for him, where he could slot in and what it means for his long-term future at the club. So if you haven't seen that, I definitely recommend checking out because we're all fans of Emi Buendia, aren't we? However, a lot of Villa fans think that's what Gerrard will do. I'm not so sure. We've seen him revert time and time again to the two up front of Ings and Watkins with a number 10 in behind, who more often than not is Felipe Coutinho. I think Felipe's looked a little bit better since he didn't make the Seleção squad. I think he really needs to put in a good run of games now. And the goals and assists need to start coming now if he is going to make the World Cup squad because there's a lot of competition to get into that Brazil side. And I think what lends itself positively to that perhaps is the performance from James Maddison in Leicester's 4-0 win, the most recent performance from Forest, and just how that number 10 masterclass impacted Forest and enabled Leicester to run away with that game quite comfortably. I imagine if you're Steven Gerrard, you're getting Emi Buendia and Felipe Coutinho down, sitting them in the video room, getting the tapes out of that performance and watching just how Maddison influenced that game, where he got his goals, the positions that he took up, because he was so effective. And hopefully we see a similar performance from those boys on Monday night. in just the last point on the forward line, obviously there's a lot of pressure on Gerrard right now to give Cameron Archer some minutes. I've even seen some people on Twitter saying that he could start this game. I don't think so. I think there's more of a chance that I will start this game at the City Ground. It wouldn't surprise me if we did see Cameron Archer get some more minutes. We know what Gerrard is like. He's a very stubborn, very rough character. I don't think he's going to cave in that easily, but he should because Cameron Archer is fantastic. And at a time when all Villa struggle to do is score goals. All Cameron Archer does do is score goals. No Villa player this season has scored more than once. We've had, I think, 6 or 7 different goal scorers. And whilst you can spin that positively and say it's good that we're getting goals from all over the pitch, you know, Douglas Luiz has chimed in, albeit from a corner. Jacob Ramsey, Emi Buendia is one of the goal scorers as well. So we have had goals coming from all over the pitch, but none of them perhaps this weighs most heavily on Ollie Watkins' shoulders, who was very poor against Leeds. None of them have managed to find the net more than once, and that needs to change soon if we are going to have a good season. But for Gerrard, it's about taking it back to basics. That's what he said in his press conference. It's about making us hard to beat again. Now, for me, I actually have a bit of an issue with this because I think Villa are hard to beat. I don't think we ship goals like we did when perhaps Gerrard came in. I think defensively we've been pretty solid. I think Mings has been fantastic. And despite all of the mishaps that we've had in that back line, Kamara sitting in front of the back line, he's gone. Carlos has gone. Dean has gone. Augustinsen's gone. Matty Cash has gone as well at points this season. I think we've been pretty good defensively. It's just going forward where we need to take the shackles off a little bit. Whilst that might make us slightly leakier at the back, we just need to get this side scoring some goals, get some confidence back in that front line. But Gerrard, we know he's quite hesitant to do that, rightly or wrongly. And so it looks like this will be a game where I think both sides will look to try and batten down the hatches, make themselves harder to beat, especially for Nottingham Forest. And just a few points on them because it's been a crazy week for them. Literally about 15 minutes before I'm recording this podcast, Steve Cooper signed a new deal at Nottingham Forest until 2025. Now, it was announced yesterday, so that's Thursday, whenever you guys are listening to this, that he was to be given more time. But today, they've gone one step further and handed him that new deal, which will take him through until the end of the 2024-25 season. And as a neutral, I'm very happy with this. I'm really happy that it's a nice show of support, which you don't often get from newly promoted sides, especially when ambitions are high, when they've spent as much money as they have. It's good to see them double down because the fans do love him. And I think this creates a bit of a problem for Villa, really, because it's almost, I think, going to be a case of new manager bounce. There's a lot of talk on Forest Twitter about, choosing a certain minutes to stand up and give him a standing ovation, to give him a minute's applause, to show the appreciation and their love they have for him in Nottingham, given that they gave them that, that all-important promotion for the first time in 20 odd years or whatever it was. It's almost going to be like a case of new manager bounce. I really believe that. I think they're entering a new era really at Nottingham Forest where they say, no, we think Cooper is the man to take us forward. We really believe in him. And the fans have responded really well to that. So it's going to be a really good atmosphere at the City Ground. I think they're going to be confident that perhaps this is the game where they can get a result. Their only win of the season, their 1 of 8, came against West Ham at home. And despite the fact that they currently sit bottom of the league and they've conceded an absolute 20 plus goals already after only 8 games, it'd be really interesting to see how they set up, whether it changes too much, because one of the reasons that I did think Steve Cooper was in trouble was for that Leicester game, he reverted to a back 4. And this is a cardinal sin, really, I think, for managers, is when they're under so much pressure that they start to change their philosophies. Notts Forest have played almost exclusively with a back 5, certainly for all their time in the Premier League and for most of their time, if not all of their time in the Championship under Steve Cooper. It is very much his blueprint. It's very much the system that he identifies with and believes in. And to see him go away from that at Leicester was a little bit concerning because I never think it's good when managers start to do that. So it'd be very interesting to see whether he sticks with that decision or whether he goes with the back 5 against the Villa. I certainly think it would be brave for him to go with the back 4 again. I think it was an experiment, which you can safely say in a 4-0 loss, it didn't work. But I do have a little bit of sympathy with them because in that game, for those of them that watched it or saw the highlights, Taiwo Iwanyu hit the post very early on in the game for Forest. And then just 10 minutes later, Forest were 3-0 down. The game just swung, and it's a cruel game in football, and it's incredible how it can do that. But I almost felt like Forest were, if that had gone in, it'd be very interesting to see how that game then spun, because no doubt the Leicester would have bought, the Leicester fans would have bore down on Brendan Rodgers. The King Power might become maybe a slightly more toxic atmosphere, and I don't think they go in and score 4 goals. So perhaps, I don't think they'll consider themselves unlucky, but perhaps they will believe that on another day, if that one you shot hit the back of the net, it would have been a different game. But they have been very poor this season. I think Villa fans are certainly expecting a win for Villa. And it's very important for Gerrard as well that I think he gets this result, because I think if we get anything less than a win in this game, the pressure will really be on. And I think we're starting to see some quite nasty sides to Gerrard. I mean, obviously we're going to shout at Ashley Priest as well, and give him our support, because how Gerrard spoke to him about the whole Cameron Hudson thing was really bad. And you don't want to see it get to that. And when the manager goes within himself and becomes snappy and aggressive in press conferences, because that helps nobody. So let's hope that's not the case. Let's hope for some positive results. I think we need one. I do feel like it's going to be a draw, though. I don't think it's going to be particularly pretty. I think both sides are going to really hone back on their defensive abilities. As I said, become harder to beat, look to be a bit more tough to play against, more resolute, certainly defensively. I don't think that should be Villa's priority, but that looks like what Gerrard is going to be focusing on. So let's see how this one goes, guys. But that is all from me. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. I will be back on Monday night to record the podcast, so you guys will either get that after the game or you'll get it first thing on Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, but guys, make sure you like, subscribe. Hopefully you guys will join me on Monday night to talk about a Villa win. So I'll see you then, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and up the Villa.